The Young and the Restless spoilers Friday's full episodes June 27, 2025. The mood inside Adam's penthouse was heavy, sharpened by tension that had been growing over the past week, something he couldn't name but felt in his gut, in the way the air around Genoa City had changed. He had seen patterns before, movements in the corporate world that looked innocuous on the surface but spelled calculated invasion if you knew where to look. And Adam always knew. It was both a curse and a talent, this ability to feel the shift in power before it was announced. That's why he had reached out to Victor. But his father hadn't answered. Not once. 3 messages, escalating in urgency, left on a private channel that only the two of them used for situations that required discretion and immediate action. And now, silence. For Victor, silence was a message in itself, sometimes deliberate, sometimes damning. But this time, it wasn't strategy. It was absence. Victor and Nikki had left town days earlier, supposedly for a retreat at their European estate, unreachable by any means but landline. But Adam knew his father. Victor didn't go dark without purpose. Either he was unaware of the threat building around them, or he was being kept in the dark. That's why, when Chelsea entered Victor's office unannounced and found Adam pacing, eyes locked on financial reports, she immediately sensed the urgency. He barely acknowledged her, only glancing up long enough to speak the one sentence that had been echoing in his mind: "Someone is making a move in Genoa City, and I think it's Aristotle Dumas." The name alone shifted the temperature in the room. Chelsea stepped further inside. She wasn't as deeply embedded in the corporate game anymore, but she still remembered Dumas from the whispers surrounding his European expansion. The sudden rise, the unknown origins, the suspicion that followed him like perfume. She had always sensed something about him was too perfect to be real. Now, standing in Newman's inner sanctum, watching Adam sift through real estate transfers and shell company acquisitions, she realized those suspicions hadn't just returned, they'd crystallized into something darker. "He's buying downtown," Adam said, spreading papers across the desk. "Under Arabesque Holdings. Luxury apartments. Commercial buildings. Warehouses. Entire blocks are being purchased quietly, through LLCs registered in tax havens. But the paper trail ends with Arabesque. And Arabesque belongs to Dumas," Chelsea whispered, connecting the dots. Adam nodded. "That's why I've been trying to reach my father. Because if Victor doesn't move now, if Newman doesn't respond, we could wake up and realize we don't own this city anymore. Dumas will." She took a deep breath, staring at the map he had marked with red circles. So many properties. So many strategic points. "What does he want with Genoa City?" she asked. Adam looked up, his eyes stormy. "Power. And revenge. He's not just a businessman. He's a man who disappeared in disgrace and came back with billions. And no conscience." Chelsea tried to rationalize. "Maybe Victor's just out of range. If he's at the castle, there's barely any cell reception." "Exactly," Adam said, his voice lower. "Which means Dumas knew exactly when to strike. When the Newmans were scattered. When no one was watching the chessboard. He wants to move in while Victor's out of play." Together, they made their way to society, where the air buzzed with the quiet hum of wealth and distraction. Adam kept his voice low as he filled Chelsea in on the finer details. How Dumas was working through silent investors, using intermediaries, and targeting properties with known ties to Newman subsidiaries. It was a siege disguised as a shopping spree. And if Arabesque's acquisitions weren't blocked soon, it would be too late. Chelsea's phone buzzed. She checked it. "Still no word from Victor," she said. "And no landline access from here." Adam clenched his jaw. "Then we need to act without him." Meanwhile, elsewhere in Genoa City, another chapter was unfolding. A quieter one, but no less vital to the web of alliances forming beneath the surface. Damien Cain, Cain's cousin and new player in the city's business scene, had returned not with fanfare, but with focus. Unlike Cain, Damien hadn't abandoned his past, he had built on it. Charming but grounded, strategic but accessible, Damien had quickly drawn interest from every corner of Chancellor Winters. And that included Lily Winters. Their history wasn't romantic, but it was long-standing. Years of friendly competition, missed connections, and shared goals. Now, for the first time in a decade, they found themselves circling the same project, the revitalization of Genoa City's media landscape. Lily, with her calm authority and sharp instincts, had built Chancellor's media division from the ground up. Damien, ever the innovator, brought new technologies, decentralized models, and bold ideas. Their conversations, initially professional, became spirited debates. They challenged each other, interrupted each other, laughed harder than they should have. Others noticed. And soon, the friendly rivalry turned into something charged with potential. "I didn't come back to flirt," Damien had told her with a grin. "Then why are you doing it so well?" Lily had replied. But beneath the flirtation was a mutual respect that couldn't be faked. And both of them knew, if their paths continued to converge, something would eventually give. And that convergence might arrive sooner than expected. Because what neither of them knew was that Cain had been watching closely. Not out of jealousy, but out of calculation. Damien was family, yes. But he was also competition. And if Damien aligned himself with Lily, it could complicate Cain's plans, not just personally, but financially. Because Lily still carried weight in Chancellor. And Damien still had access to European capital that Dumas desperately wanted. Back at Society, Adam made a final decision. "I'm going to Arabesque," he told Chelsea. "In person. Are you sure that's wise?" "No," he said. "But it's necessary. Because this wasn't just about property. It wasn't even about legacy. It was about control. And Adam Newman wasn't about to let a ghost from the past, no matter how well-dressed, steal Genoa City from under their feet." Would you like to continue next with Adam confronting Cain/Dumas, or deepen the storyline between Damien and Lily, including how Cain might sabotage their alliance? I can also build toward Victor returning to retaliate or discovering Chelsea's secret involvement in Dumas's world. Chelsea leaned over the table at Society, eyes scanning the document Adam had laid out, her voice low but tinged with rising urgency as she tapped a circle marked in deep red at the city center. "Look here," she murmured, "he's not just buying up prime properties downtown, he's building a perimeter." Her eyes moved down the list. Around Jabot. Chancellor Winters. Newman Tower. Every major asset connected to your family, and mine. She looked up at Adam. "You don't buy around power unless you're planning to contain it. Or worse." Adam nodded slowly, his jaw clenched. The pattern had been forming for weeks, but now it was undeniable. Surrounding your enemy before you strike. "That's what you do when you're preparing for war," he said. "You trap the oxygen. You cut off supply lines. And when they realize what you've done, it's too late. You don't surround a business. You surround a target." His voice lowered to a whisper. "And surrounding is what you do before you kill." Chelsea's eyes widened. It was a terrifying possibility, but one that made perfect sense. Aristotle Dumas's Cain Ashby wasn't just returning to reclaim reputation. He was returning to dismantle the very foundations of the empires that once humiliated him. And he was doing it with surgical precision. But while strategy and silence brewed in the city, across the darkened countryside aboard a private luxury train bound for the outskirts of Genoa, Lily Winters lay wide awake, restless beneath the silk sheets of her cabin. The rocking of the train did nothing to soothe her. Her thoughts wouldn't stop. She turned over, then back again, but the past echoed louder than the present. The last time she had seen Cain, it hadn't ended well. The fight had been ugly, about loyalty, about his father, about the patterns he refused to break. She had tried to make peace. He had tried to manipulate it. And in the end, she had walked away with more regret than closure. Devon had warned her not to engage again. The sooner you distance yourself from Cain, the better, he had said. And he was right. But knowing it didn't make the memories any quieter. Finally, she threw back the covers, slipped into her robe, and padded softly through the narrow corridor of the train. Her destination wasn't planned. It was instinctive. When she reached the lounge car, the dim lighting glowed over crystal decanters and velvet booths. There, seated near the window with a half-filled tumbler of whiskey, was Damien Cain. He looked up and smiled when she entered. "Sleepless too?" he asked. She nodded. Cain. He didn't press. He didn't need to. How'd the conversation go? She sank into the seat across from him. About how I expected. Devon was right. He still wants to pull me back in. Damien studied her carefully. You're not going back, are you? She shook her head. No. The sooner I stay away from Cain, the better. There was a pause, mutual understanding without needing details. The past didn't need to be replayed when both already knew how it ended. Damien reached for the side cabinet, saying, I was about to play a few hands of cards to kill time. You interested? But as he opened the drawer, his hand brushed against something unexpected, cold, metallic, and sharp. He lifted it slightly and held it up. A dagger, ornate and gleaming beneath the soft train lights. Well, that's not a deck of cards, he said with a smirk. But it's beautiful. Lily blinked. Why is there a knife in a poker drawer? Damien twirled it thoughtfully before setting it down gently and retrieving the actual deck of cards. Maybe Dumas has a flair for the dramatic. Or maybe this is how he settles high-stakes bets. They laughed, the tension broken, the absurdity oddly fitting for a night like this. Damien shuffled the cards with skilled fingers. Crazy eights? Lily raised a brow. Do we have 5 people? Damien grinned. Fair point. Poker it is. The game began casually. First hand. Lily won. Second hand. Lily again. Damien narrowed his eyes. Are you hustling me? I run a company, Lily said sweetly. I know how to read people. 3 hands later, she was still undefeated. Damien threw down his cards in mock frustration. Okay, you win. Let's switch it up. Go fish. Now it was Lily's turn to groan. Seriously? House rules, Damien teased. And surprisingly, he started to win. Lily watched him closely as his energy shifted, not competitive, not smug, but relaxed. It was the first time in weeks she had seen someone just be. No agenda. No pressure. No buried motives. Why'd you really come back? She asked as he laid down a pair of 7s. He glanced up at her. Family. Legacy. Maybe guilt. But mostly, he hesitated. To do something that's mine. Without Cain's shadow. The name lingered between them. Lily didn't speak. She didn't have to. The fire between them wasn't romantic, not yet, but it was a quiet connection forged through understanding. 2 people circling different losses, finding brief peace in the middle of a sleepless night. The game ended with Damien winning the final round. Best 2 out of 3, he asked. Lily leaned back, her smile tired but genuine. Maybe tomorrow. Outside the train window, the world rolled by in darkness. And somewhere behind them, the city they'd left was beginning to tremble under the weight of secrets it didn't yet understand. Because Cain wasn't done. And neither were they. Would you like the next chapter to cover Adam confronting Dumas, Victor finally returning with a counterattack, or Chelsea secretly trying to manipulate Adam while hiding her own knowledge of Cain's endgame? Let me know the direction and I'll keep expanding it in this dramatic, cohesive tone. The quiet hum of the train beneath them, combined with the flickering golden lamps overhead, cast a tranquil warmth in the lounge car as Lily and Damien leaned back in their seats after a spontaneous round of Go Fish that had ended in his favor. She smiled through her tiredness, arching a brow as she tossed a card back onto the table. You're joking, right? You totally played me. Damien grinned, his fingers idly shuffling the now abandoned deck. You mean poker? I told you, I'm hopeless at that. But Go Fish? That's where the real champions live. She laughed, light and honest, and he watched her for a moment longer before asking the question he'd been holding back. You want to stay up and watch the sunrise? It wasn't flirtation, not exactly. It was connection, a rare thing they both understood. Lily paused, contemplating the calm that had finally begun to settle within her, then replied softly, I'd love to. But I think the second my head hits the pillow, I'm going to crash. With that, she rose, stretched lightly, and offered him a parting smile before disappearing into the corridor. Damien watched her leave, then turned back to the window. The stars were barely visible now. The first threads of dawn were beginning to pierce the sky. But in France, under a sky of deep steel and rising wind, the storm was not only meteorological. Amanda Sinclair stood on the balcony of the estate overlooking the cliffs, arms crossed, posture tense as she turned to Cain, who had just returned from his meeting with Victor. How did it go? She asked. Cain's expression said more than words. I offered to buy Chancellor, he said simply, brushing his fingers through his hair. The mustache barely blinked. Amanda exhaled sharply. And what? You're surprised? Victor doesn't blink unless it's part of a long-term setup. Cain smiled bitterly. Maybe. But he's underestimating me. Again. Amanda stepped closer, her tone more measured. It's a relief, though, not to have to hide Aristotle Dumas anymore. It served its purpose. The alias gave you time to rebuild, quietly. But you're not hiding now. No, Cain said, looking out over the storm-bent trees. Now I'm claiming what's mine. He was calm, but Amanda recognized the storm within. They both knew Devon was pushing Lily to leave tomorrow. Her time at the chateau was nearly up. And yet Cain stared at the sky as though it held the answer to his most urgent prayer. There's a storm coming, he said quietly, his voice almost wistful. Maybe it'll keep her here a little longer. Amanda looked at him sharply, unsure whether he meant to stall Lily out of sentiment or strategy. But the moment passed, and the conversation shifted back to business. Chancellor. The legacy. The prize. I'm going to get it, Cain said, his voice now hardened with steel. One way or another. The words barely finished leaving his mouth before a new voice cut through the heavy silence. Not if I have anything to say about it. Amanda turned first. Phyllis Summers stood in the doorway, her eyes sharp, arms folded, red hair tousled by the wind that had followed her into the room. Cain narrowed his gaze. Listening in, he asked coolly. Oh please, Phyllis scoffed, stepping forward. You two aren't exactly subtle. Your voice carries. Amanda looked at Cain, silently questioning whether to stay, but he gave a slight nod. She retreated without protest, leaving Phyllis and Cain alone. Cain turned his full attention on her now. 10 minutes. That's all you get. Phyllis stepped closer, fire in her voice, urgency in every word. You're making enemies, Cain. Faster than you're making allies. You want Chancellor? Fine. But you're not going to bulldoze your way into the hearts and minds of Genoa City without setting off every landmine along the way. Cain raised an eyebrow. And you think you can guide me through them? I know I can, she shot back. I've been in this game longer than most of your fake companies have existed. I've seen power shift. I've seen people get destroyed because they thought they could go it alone. Don't be stupid. Cain crossed his arms, unimpressed. I have Amanda for strategy. For legal. For discretion. I don't need a cheerleader. Phyllis's face twisted slightly. Right. Amanda for legal. Maybe she'll be your CEO too. You sure she's not cooking breakfast for you too while she's at it? Her voice cracked slightly, not with jealousy, but with desperation, the fear of being irrelevant. I know what you want, Cain. You want Chancellor. And I know how to help you get it. Because this isn't about what's good for me. It's about what's good for Chancellor. And since I happen to be the best, that means it's me. Cain said nothing for a long moment. He simply stared at her, unblinking, assessing. Phyllis had always been unpredictable. Reckless. But she was also relentless. And when her back was to the wall, she became something far more useful than any lawyer, she became a weapon. Still, he remained unmoved. Why would I trust you now, he asked. After everything? Phyllis didn't falter. Because I have no one left to burn. No agenda. Just the simple truth that I'm better inside your empire than outside it. He watched her as though weighing the exact moment her value would outweigh the chaos she inevitably brought with her. But for now, he said nothing. Which, for Phyllis, was hope enough. She turned and left the room, her heels echoing against the stone corridor. And outside, the storm broke. The rain came first, hard, fast, relentless. Then wind. Then thunder. Cain stepped onto the balcony again, letting the cold air strike his face. Lightning cracked across the horizon. In the distance, he could see the train lights flicker along the coastal line. Lily was on that train. Or perhaps still in the chateau, unpacked, uncertain. He didn't know yet. But he knew one thing, the storm was no longer coming. It was already here. And when it cleared, someone would be left standing at the top of Chancellor. And someone would be buried beneath it. Let me know if you'd like the next chapter to explore Victor's return and retaliation, Amanda discovering Phyllis's move, or perhaps a romantic turning point between Lily and Damien that drives Cain to desperation.